I got absurdly rich at a young age last month, making well over $100,000 with my business in profit. Not because of some secret information or business model I found in some crappy 995 course. No, it was because I rewired who I am. I brainwashed myself. And if you radically want to change what you get in this life, which is why I'm guessing you clicked on this video, you first must radically change who you fundamentally are. Because external reality, I mean, look around, is simply a reflection of an internal cause. And so if you focus during this lesson, I will reveal and explain something to you that the vast majority of people never really truly realize or understand their entire lives, which is how to consciously shift your identity, your beliefs, completely uncapping your action, making your financial goals, whatever they may be, quite literally inevitable. But let me hit you with a harsh truth. If you cannot focus for the duration of this lesson, this whole making money thing, this whole escaping a life of mediocrity isn't for you. You've got to give yourself a fighting chance, because my God, some of the stuff in here it's going to change your life. It's going to blow your mind. Now, I'm sure you can see some of the fancy models that we're going to go through. It's important that we start off with the main component of success. If you're trying to achieve something, we want to understand the main component which causes that effect known as success, which you're trying to achieve. It can be different for different people. It doesn't matter. Hold that image of what you want. What actually determines it? Because there are so many people who stand to gain a huge amount financially on YouTube and other social media platforms by convincing you that you're missing some sort of information or strategy or tactic or business model to getting rich. The reason you're not successful is because you're missing some piece of information, some external. You must see through this grift. You've got to see through it. Because in the world of the internet, but especially with AI, information, well, it's a commodity. Information is everywhere. If you have a modicum, any small amount of initiative and a Wi-Fi connection, you have access to the largest storehouse of information any human could ever access in the history of the universe. I mean, people 40 years ago couldn't even dream of the information and the tools and the everything that you have access to. If you think that the how-to, the tactics, the strategies, the things that change like the weather, if you think that's your bottleneck, you are deluding yourself. The real bottleneck to your success, well, it's you, my friend. You are the sole determinant of how much success you see in life or you don't see within your lifetime. And when I say you, I'm not saying you in terms of an objective sense. I'm not even sure that's a real thing. I'm talking about the concept, the image of self that you've built around yourself. In other words, your identity. This is the gravitational force that will quite literally control your life in every single way through three levers. The emotions you feel, the thoughts you think, and most importantly, the actions you take. You see, the identity is simply the collection of beliefs that you hold about yourself. And it controls quite literally everything. If you look around, you're simply seeing your identity back at you, and we will map this out very carefully in just a second. This is perfectly encapsulated in, I think, my favorite quote from Heraclitus, which we can see down here. Character is destiny. Who you are being determines what you get. It's a simple insight, but it's so important to understand, and most people don't actually implement this into their life. Most people are stuck in what I call the cycle of mediocrity, and I'm sure you can map this out in your life. If you're going for anything extraordinary, exceptional, I guarantee this is happening to you, because it was for me for the longest time. And so what happens is you're working consistently and you're disciplined for maybe 2 to 4 weeks and everything's going well, and then you hit some sort of resistance, some sort of adversity, it gets hard, negative emotion, and then you sabotage your progress, you slow down and that progress begins to fall again. And then you get motivation, you hit rock bottom and you go back up. And what happens is we have this oscillation of progress, discipline, of bouncing back between the person you need to be to achieve the goal, that sort of locked in version of you, and then well, the person you're trying to escape, the current version of you, and you're just swinging back and forth. You're oscillating up and down, up and down. You know, there are these feast and famine. It's this cycle of self-sabotage that quite literally everybody is stuck in. If this is you, this is not unique in any way. And what's happening here is you're trying to achieve a goal, create a new future through doing more, but holding on to the identity of the past. You must understand the identity is the beliefs about yourself. It represents the zone of the familiar, the zone of the comfortable. And so once you venture past that boundary of familiar, which the self marks, you begin to encounter resistance, fear. It's unknown. It represents a risk, a threat. And when that happens, the elastic band snaps back. You run back to the familiar, the known, the comfortable. And this will just continue to repeat itself if you don't know how to consciously change who you are. Because a lot of people do say you've got to shift your identity or you've got to shift your beliefs to change what you get in life. This isn't the first time this has been brought up. That's not the point of this video. We're going to hit some depth. We're going to go mining. But very often when people say this, what is their mechanism? You know, I see a lot of people talk about quantum physics or some spiritual woo-woo stuff. And sure, you can be into that, but it's not observable. A lot of it's a lot of grift. It's a lot of nonsense. You see, when I looked at this, I want to see the mechanism, the model in which this happens. Quite literally, the model of reality, the model of how you as a self create your reality. That's everything. You know, a lot of people say the meaning to life is what you deem it to be, and that's achieving your goals, achieving your dreams. Life isn't worth living if you can't achieve what you want to achieve within the life. And this is what I'm really trying to model and map out. And that's what we've got down here. Omnomorphic reality. This is something that I've gone through, my God, painstaking years. This is probably like the 20th iteration of modeling reality, understanding the rules in the game of reality, we can call it. And like all games, you have winners and you have losers. Now, if you don't understand the rules to reality, by default, my friend, you are a loser. And so the first step to achieving absurd amounts of wealth or achieving any sort of absurd goal at a ridiculously young age, whatever you really want in life, is understanding the rules of how reality actually works. Not from a woo-woo spiritual sense, from an observable, based in neuroscience and psychological principles. This is what we're looking at here, and it will blow your mind. So let's walk through it. We've been teasing long enough. We understand the component of success is the self. But how does this all actually work? And so what we're looking at here is what I call omnomorphic reality. Now, before we jump in, what does omnomorphic mean? Omnomorphic or omnimorphism, omni meaning total, morph meaning transformation or change. And so what we're looking at here is total transformation. This is almost the prognosis. This is what we need to do. You see, most people try to change by just doing more. This never works. If we want to change, we must totally transform all of the nodes here, the self-concept, the state of being, action, thoughts, emotions, all at once, at the same time. This is how we create lasting change. And so omnomorphism is the philosophy of inevitable change. And that's what we're going to go through now. And so ultimately, you may be sort of running through this model. Hopefully it's up on your screen somewhere, or the editor is getting fired. And what you could probably see a couple things and maybe some stuff is clicking, but ultimately we'll go through this at the very basic. So we've got the dividing line here. On one side, we've got the inner world. On the other side, we've got the outer world. At its most basic, what this is showing is how your inner world projects itself onto the outer world and the actual mechanism in which this happens. And again, once we understand the mechanism, we understand the rules, and then we can begin to actually win this game. And so it's how your inner world projects onto your outer world. Now, your inner world starts at the self-concept at the top here. Self-concept is king. You must understand this. If you take anything away, self-concept sits above all else. It is the king. It's the emperor of your life. As I said, self-concept or identity is the gravitational force in your life. Now, self-concept is the exact same word. It's synonymous with identity, self-image, other People may call it your paradigm, or just who you believe you are. And we can define it very simply. The self-concept is simply the collection of beliefs you hold about yourself and your place in the world around you. And beliefs, again, beliefs is synonymous with the perceptions, the biases, the interpretations, the assumptions, the opinions, the ideologies you have about life. These are all your beliefs, and they're all one of the same. And these form and they connect together about different things about yourself. So your likes, your dislikes, your hates, your loves, your desires, what you're good at, what you're bad at, your abilities, your capabilities, and then also the things around you. You see, like the skills you have, or the environment, or the people that are around you. You all hold beliefs about things that you have had prior experience to. And so what you must understand is the self-concept and external reality are one of the same. Your self-concept projects itself onto external reality through belief. Belief has this mechanism of magnifying and maintaining itself. It goes through this self-reinforcing loop, which I won't go into huge amounts of depth here because it's more theoretical, it's not needed. But ultimately, if you believe something to be true, you will seek out evidence to confirm that belief, and then you begin the cycle of what's known as a confirmation bias. And so your beliefs will continue to magnify and maintain themselves. And what you must understand about belief, or just life in general, is nothing is objective. True or false is not really real. It's not something we can actually observe. Life is subjective, and so if you deem something to be true, it will be. If you believe something to be true, that is how it will occur. And so instead of looking at things whether it's true or false, you should actually look at belief in the lens of whether it serves you or it doesn't. And the simple frame in which you can view this is whether it gets you closer to your goal or whether it gets you further away. Everything else is kind of irrelevant. You want to choose the lens of belief that you have. The lens is tinted. Belief tints your lens. We will never be able to not wear sunglasses. It's part of our human programming. We have an identity. It will always be there. And so let's choose a lens of beliefs, an identity that aligns with the goal that we want. And that's what we're trying to do. But self-concept doesn't just automatically create external reality through magic or quantum whatever. Stuff is happening here. And so let's move on down to the state of being. Now, the state of being, number 2 in command, can be defined very simply. The state of being is the cumulative felt tone of your thoughts and emotions over a given time period. And so this is kind of what a lot of people might call a mood, or if you're more spiritual, you could call it a vibration or something like that. But I'll stick to state of being, and it's your thoughts and emotions put together, that sort of tone that they make, the mood. So over a given day, what sort of thoughts are you having if you average them all out? And all your emotions, if you average them all out, is it positive? Is it negative? Is it confident? Is it anxious? This is where we can begin to pinpoint the state of being. And the state of being is really interesting because the state of being is a snapshot of your self-concept. It is a materialized snapshot of your self-concept in a given environment. So if you plop someone in an environment and you assess their state of being, the thoughts and emotions they are having, we can see their self-concept. We can see what they believe to be true about themselves and the world around you. And so this is why the state of being is so interesting. It's made up of the thoughts that you feel and the emotions that you think. The thoughts that you feel, that doesn't make sense. The emotions you feel and the thoughts you think arise through the filter of your beliefs. These do not just happen in isolation. And so you must understand your emotions and your thoughts are controlled by your beliefs, but we'll break down that mechanism for each. And so the emotions you feel, emotion is very interesting when you really think about it. Emotion is quite literally your body's reaction to what it thinks about a certain scenario. It is your belief in action. Your emotional response is what you believe to be true about something. It's your beliefs quite literally in action. It's such an interesting response. And so what you feel about something is really representing what you believe to be true about it. And so it's important to understand there isn't some list of beliefs that we can access where it's like your first belief is X and then your second belief is Y. This doesn't exist. And there is no definitive list of beliefs. That's not really how it works. This is more theoretical, but they do exist. The idea of a belief does psychologically exist. And so we're never going to truly know what our beliefs are, but we get a very clear indication based off the emotions that we feel about certain things. Think about this. Let's say we have two individuals. On my left here, or your right, we have Bob. And then on my right, we have Greg. Bob and Greg. Bob, as a child, was told that grizzly bears are these fun, cuddly, friendly animals that are like big dogs. They're wonderful to be around. And that's, did I call him Greg? We'll call him Greg and Bob. I can't even remember the names. I'm going crazy. Is this a crazy story? It will make sense in a second. Greg, again, he's told his whole life, bears are friendly. Grizzly bears are friendly. Bob, his entire life, has been told grizzly bears are the most dangerous animals in the world. They will kill you in an instant. Greg and Bob become friends in later life. And they decide they're going to go on a hiking trip. They're going to go camping out in the Canadian Rockies, which actually happens to be bear country. And so they go camping there, and what do you know it? They encounter a big, fat, angry grizzly bear. And so Greg, with his set of beliefs that he has formed through his experience in his life about bears, has this emotional response of excitement. Dopamine rises, happiness, serotonin, quite literally a physical response based off the belief that he holds, that mind-body connection in play. And so he approaches the bear and, well, Greg, he doesn't make it, unfortunately. Bob, on the other hand, has a very different emotional response based off the beliefs he has. Fear, adrenaline, he sprints down the mountain. This guy had two differing beliefs and two wildly differing emotional responses. Now, this is a completely ridiculous story. True story, by the way. Based on a true story. But it's completely ridiculous. But you get the idea of how influential your beliefs are on the emotions you feel. The emotions you feel represent the beliefs you have about the world. The beliefs you have about the world is what your beliefs project themselves. And so if you look around, the house you're in, the car you drive, the amount of money you have in your bank account, your income, everything represents the beliefs you have about yourself. Understand that. And the emotions are a very big clue of what those beliefs are. Thoughts, on the other hand, well, how do beliefs create thoughts? Now, it goes without saying, a lot of the thoughts you can have are intrusive, they're random. What we really care about is the thoughts that are recurring and significant. And so these thoughts, again, arise through the filter of beliefs. You know, thoughts, that internal narration about the environment around you, perhaps. What you actually notice is based off what you believe to be significant. You have to understand that narration you have about yourself and the commentary you give yourself and how you rate yourself in your thought, but also what you pay attention to, what you look at, is all your belief in action. It's your belief on what you even pay attention to in the first place, based on levels of significance, based off perception or assumptions you have about the world. And so your beliefs are inextricably linked with the emotions you feel and the thoughts you think, making up that state of being, making up that mood. And so that's the first very solid connection you want to make between the self-concept, who you believe you are, and therefore really how you feel and how you operate on a day-to-day basis. But up until this point, we haven't mentioned the most important thing, which is action. Now, loads of people talk about action. You've got to take action. You've got to do this. And there's no question about that. Action is the only way that we can interact with the world around us. I want to make that very clear. Nothing will change if nothing will change. If you do not change your action, nothing will change. We cannot change reality just with emotion. We cannot change reality just with emotion or thought. They do not have any impact on the physical environment around us. Now, that does not mean they are not significant. You have to understand there are I almost come across two schools of thought out there. One side is these sort of hustlers. They're like action, 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 ignore everything else. It's complete nonsense. And then the other side are these people who are like kind of lunatics, and they're all about like meditating and spiritual stuff, but they don't take a shred of action. This is why I never use the word manifest, because it means a million different things to a million different people. And for some people it doesn't mean this, but for a lot, when you say manifest, it has connotations of not taking a lot of action. And so that's why you avoid bastardized words like that. If you do not take action, nothing will happen. Action is the only way we interact with the external reality around you. People say thoughts and emotions do. I haven't seen any mechanism through which that is true, but they are not wrong. Thoughts and emotions are so important because your state of being, you can see this big arrow coming down from state of being into action, brilliant arrow from me, is the biggest, your state of being is the biggest shareholder determining what action you take. And so emotions and thoughts don't have a direct impact on external reality or the circumstances you have in life, but they do have an impact because they are the biggest shareholder determining what action you take and what you don't take. Very rarely, very seldom does someone act above how they are feeling. Think about it. You're feeling confident, you're going to take confident action. You are feeling anxious, your action will also reflect that. And so how you feel, how you think is going to be a big determinant of what sort of action you take. What sort of action you take determines what you get. And so now we're starting to see how self-concept completely has a grip hold over external reality. And so action can be broken down into three types: habitual, reactive, and deliberate. Now these percentages that I've got here on the right here, ignore them. I've actually been informed they are completely BS by smarter people than me. So ignore the percentages, but just understand that the majority of the action you take on a day-to-day basis is habitual. It's stuff that you repeat on a daily or a weekly basis. It's stuff you've become familiarized with. And then also, that's behind the curtain of consciousness. And so it's important to understand when people talk about the subconscious mind doesn't exist as a location. Consciousness is this curtain that you can open and close. And sometimes you operate more on autopilot when you're relying on habitual and reactive behavior. And sometimes you can open that curtain more and have more conscious behavior come in. But as a general rule, the majority of the action you take is habitual. You're not thinking about it whilst you're doing it. It's not deliberately, consciously being done. Another big proportion of your action is reactive. This isn't something that happens every single day. It's a reaction to something that happens in your external reality around you. Again, reactive action is like someone throws a punch at you. You're not even thinking. Do you fight back or do you run? Fight or flight. That is based off who you believe you are, the type of person that you are, and also the thoughts and feelings you have about yourself in the given time period. And so the habitual and reactive action that you take is determined directly by who you believe you are, but most importantly by the emotions you feel and the thoughts that you think. Now, the vast majority of people, when they try to achieve goals, just go here. They go for deliberate action. That's it. Now let's even say it's 20%. You are trying to change one isolated node in a bigger system that is, action doesn't happen in isolation, and you are only trying to change 20% of that. You are trying to consciously change how you act, but not changing anything else. And you're pretending as if action happens in isolation. This is why that cycle of mediocrity happens. You try to change, you hold on to the identity of the past. This is why majority of people fail. It's like turning up to a gunfight with a toothpick. You will never win if you just try to change with conscious action. For the vast majority of people, it can happen, and I can explain why. This model does explain why it does happen, but for the vast majority of people, just doing more isn't going to work. What you must understand with action is the vast majority of the action that you do or don't take is based off how you think and feel. How you think or feel, or your state of being, is based on who you believe you are. Who you believe you are determines the action you take, and therefore it determines external reality. Now, I think that's been sufficiently explained. This initial chain, which you can see coming down from self-concept all the way down into external reality. That's the first chain that we need to understand, how your inner world projects itself onto its outer world. Now, I've discussed a lot there, a lot of different things that, each individual one of these nodes could have a whole different lesson on them. There's so many interesting things to understand here. But importantly, your self-concept reinforces itself into your external reality through this model that I've just explained. Screenshot this, print it out, put it on your shower, your fridge, your oven, your bedroom, your kitchen, anywhere. Remember this, because this is the rules of reality. This is how it works. And I don't think anybody else, no one would have shown you this before, because this is mine. This is uniquely created for me. And if you can point any flaws here, I'm more than ears, but I think this is close to being perfect, to mapping out how this actually works based on psychology and neuroscience. But we're not stopping there, because self-concept doesn't just impact external reality and then that's the end of the day. That's not how it works. They have what I call a bi-directional relationship. Self-concept impacts external reality. You can see there's a shortcut arrow you can see reflected by this one coming straight in. That's simply representing this chain that we walk through. But you can also see an arrow coming up from external reality into self-concept. And you can see these funny things, the automatic reinforcement mechanism and the EAM, the emotional amplification mechanism. What the hell are these? Well, what you must understand is the self-concept isn't static. If it were, change would be impossible. Self-concept is dynamic and it does change even without you realizing. You see, remember, self-concept is made up of beliefs. Beliefs are simply the cumulative value judgment you have about a specific thing based off the experience and evidence you've collected about it. And so if I have a belief that, I don't know, the sky is blue. Every single day I've woken up, I've experienced the sky being blue. And then I wake up at one day and the sky, for Christ's sake, it's green. That is contrary evidence to that belief. That begins to challenge that belief. But maybe one day won't do it. Second day it's green. Third day it's green. 2 weeks in, the sky is green. Now I'm beginning to shift this belief. We're beginning to build up an undeniable stack of evidence that creates a new belief. It shifts that belief. And so beliefs can change, and on a macro scale, an identity can change because all of these smaller beliefs that make it up can shift along with it. And so what shifts belief? Well, it's evidence, it's experience. What's the biggest form of evidence and experience that will confirm who you are? Well, it's your external reality. The people around you, the house you're in, the car you drive, the job you have, your income, the amount of money you have in your bank account is the biggest confirmation of who you are. It's the biggest form of evidence that you have confirming that you are who you say you are. That story you have about yourself is correct. It's external reality. But it's also important to mention the action that you take, small voice crack there, bear with me, the action that you take is also very significant evidence of who you are. The action you take is a vote for the type of person that you want to be. If you are acting confident, that is evidence that you are a confident person. Again, the emotions that you feel is evidence. The emotion you feel. If you feel confident, that's evidence you're a confident person, right? Again, the thoughts, probably the less significant of the three. Action most important, well, external reality most important, but then action, then emotion, then thoughts. But if you're thinking confident thoughts, that is some evidence that you are a confident person. And so all of this evidence feeds back from emotion, thought, action, and external reality. And they all have this red sort of diamond next to them, the ARM. And the ARM, the automatic reinforcement mechanism, is simply the evidence collection mechanism. Every time you take action, every time the external reality changes, it takes this evidence and it feeds it back to the self-concept. And the self-concept assesses that evidence. Now, typically, because the self-concept is in control, your self-concept determines the emotions, the thoughts, the actions, the external reality. It simply reinforces. That's why it's called a reinforcing mechanism. That's how beliefs magnify and maintain themselves. So if you don't change anything, nothing will change in your reality. This is why you see older people, as they begin to shift into their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, As you get older, you become more hardened in your ways. Your beliefs become hardened. Your habits, your ways of doing things become hardened because your self-concept and your external reality have sort of morphed into one. They're just one of the same because they've hardwired themselves through this mechanism of constantly reinforcing and confirming those beliefs through the automatic reinforcement mechanism. But this mechanism is also a good thing because if we provide new evidence for a new type of person, a person who aligns with the goals that we want, well, we can shift the self-concept. And so that's kind of a hint on the direction that we're going here. But that's actually how we begin to change, because this isn't showing us how to change. This is simply showing the rules. But understanding the rules in itself is such a powerful advantage. And so the ARM feeds to the self-concept. But it's important to recognize not all evidence is created equal. And that's where we introduce the EAM, seen at the top here, the emotional amplification mechanism. Emotion plays an important role in the action you take or don't take. We've already established that. But it also plays a very important role in crafting and sculpting the direction of belief you have about a certain thing. You see, not all evidence is created the same. Emotion determines two things about belief, or the beliefs that certain pieces of evidence will create. Emotion determines the strength of this evidence, how compelling it is or isn't in terms of if it will shift belief or not, and it determines the direction of that evidence. So let's take an example. You take a sales call, you take the action of a sales call, but you feel the emotion of fear and anxiety. And so you've taken the action that you are the type of person to take sales calls. That's confidence. You've taken confident action, but you didn't feel confident. And so that evidence of the action is served up to the self-concept, but it's filtered through the emotional amplification mechanism, the emotion you felt at the time period. Now, if you took confident action, but the emotion contradicts that action, well, the compellingness of that, the belief which you're trying to change, which is you are a confident person, is low because the emotion counteracts the action. The emotion is suggesting that you are still the same person, that you are kind of an imposter, a fraud. And so emotion determines the direction that belief will change based off the experience that you have. Again, emotion is your belief in action. And so if you feel a certain way about a certain piece of experience you have through a memory, that's going to determine what you believe about it. But also the emotional response, how emotional a certain experience was, is also going to determine how compelling that evidence is, how much you actually remember it. You see, you can remember when you first drove a car, that first driving lesson, because it was a big scary experience, a big emotional response. That's stuck in your memory. That was more compelling evidence about a belief than driving in your car last week. You probably can't even remember because there was nothing emotionally going on typically. And so emotion determines the strength of belief change and how compelling the evidence is, and also the direction in which the evidence changes that belief. And so it's important that we take action, but we also wrap it in a huge amount of aligned emotion as well, because the ARM doesn't just collect all evidence as equal. So this is why a lot of people take loads and loads of action through all of the pain, taking action from the old self-concept, and everything feels like it's going wrong, but they never really change the beliefs that underlie those limiting beliefs which are holding them back. So eventually they will just snap back. If you do not align your emotion, your beliefs will not change, or it won't change quickly and fast enough to see the levels of success that you are looking for. And so that's kind of the unified model. That's omnomorphic reality. It's showing that basic chain from self-concept, state of being, which is your thoughts and emotions over a given time period, creating the action which creates your external reality, and your external reality returns that feedback through the automatic reinforcement mechanism, through the filter of the emotional amplification mechanism, and reinforces that self-concept. That's pretty much everything. That is everything you need to understand and nothing you don't. This is all so important. And as I said, we could make separate videos on every single one of these nodes and mechanisms, but this is how it works. This is how the self projects itself onto external reality. But how do we understand the rules of the game? How do we win? How do I actually achieve success? We understand how important self-concept, emotion, thoughts, and actions are in terms of how it actually creates our external reality, but how do we change? Well, it's kind of like a simultaneous equation. If we want to change external reality, we simply need to change these nodes: thoughts, emotions, actions, state of being, and eventually your self-concept. And so let me just tell you this: by understanding omnomorphic reality, you've gained something which I like to call reality literacy. You understand how this actually works. It's like learning to read. You have a huge competitive advantage over anybody else because you actually understand how reality materializes in front of you, why you are where you are. And so this model explains why it's so difficult to change, because your self-concept wants to reinforce itself. The self wants to stay the same because the same represents the familiar, it represents the normal, the safe. But simply understanding how this works, how your emotions and your thoughts and your actions all interplay with each other, understanding this exists, gives you awareness over it. Awareness gives you influence. Now you can begin to influence and change things now that you understand how it works. So on top of anything else I mentioned, just understanding this in the first place gives you free will you never had. If you don't understand this, you don't have free will because you don't really know how to change your life. So even the reality literacy which you've gained over the last couple minutes when I've been explaining this gives you a huge competitive advantage. But how do we change beyond that? How do we, well, change our self-concept? Because remember, self-concept is king. Now, the solution here. Well, the solution is omnomorphic alignment. And it goes through 3 levers: action, thought, and emotion, all in one. So you remember when I mentioned if you're trying to change your life through just doing more, you're turning up to a gunfight with a toothpick, you're just outmatched, you're trying to go against the state of being, the self-concept, the emotion, and just trying to brute force action your way through it. Now for some that can work because if you brute force action for long enough and you have enough courage to do that and you're consistent and disciplined enough, eventually external reality will have to shift. It will provide enough evidence to shift that self-concept. But for the vast majority of people, if you haven't changed by now, this isn't possible for you. And why would you make your life more difficult by just trying to do more? Why wouldn't we make change easier? Why wouldn't we allow change to be easier so we can go after bigger goals? And so instead of just trying to do more, we go through omnomorphic alignment, which, as I said, omnomorphic, total transformation, which just means we change everything all in one. Our emotions, our thoughts, our actions, through habit, reactions, deliberate, self-concept, all of it changes all in one. What we're trying to do here is shift self-concept. It's important you understand that belief isn't something we could just turn on or off. We don't have that conscious ability like we do with action or thought. We cannot just create a new belief and it works like that. We cannot just flip belief on or off like a light switch. Belief is a mechanism which changes based off the evidence that we provide. And so our job, if you want to change, if you want to win this war of you versus you, which is ultimately what it is, the old version of you versus the person you need to become to achieve the goal, if you want to win that battle and therefore the battle for reality, you need to provide a huge amount of undeniable evidence that you are who you say you are. Now, to shift the self-concept and therefore your external reality, because external reality is a reflection of an internal cause. You change internally in terms of who you believe you are. You will inevitably change externally through this mechanism. But we cannot, as I said, just change belief on a dime. It doesn't work like that. And so really we have 3 levers that we can pull: action, thought, and emotion, all in one. Now, if we do this multi-pronged attack, instead of turning up to a gunfight with a toothpick, we're now turning up with a B-2 bomber, a B-2 stealth bomber, if you will. We are going to dominate if we can really learn how to control all of these nodes. Now, it's important to note, what encapsulates all of this is what I call inevitability embodiment. You become the version of you for whom the goal is inevitable. Now, it's important you follow that frame. The version of you for whom the goal is inevitable, not the version of you who already has it. A lot of people say you need to feel the goal as if you already have it. That does nothing to me. Can someone explain to me mechanistically what that actually is doing? Because ultimately, all we're trying to do here is make the action to get towards the goal more obvious and easy. Feeling the goal as if you already have it, you know, mimicking the outcome of the goal, the wealth, the lifestyle that comes with it. It may normalize the goal, and it's not completely useless, but it's not actually going to get you there. People confuse action and outcome. You need to focus on what's actually going to get you to the goal, the actions which get you there versus the outcome. You know, feeling the lifestyle, the cars, the money, whatever it is for you, that isn't what got someone rich. That is what they do when they get there. That is the outcome. You need to focus on the actions. And if you become the version of you right now for whom the goal is inevitable, by default, you are focusing on the actions. That is what we're zooming in on here. That is the person you need to become. And so you need to become them in the actions that you take. This is the most important part. Action is a vote for the type of person that you want to be, no matter how small. And so every present moment you are gifted with in a day, you can take action to get closer towards your goal. You may not tangibly see it, but you know for a fact that every single piece of action that you take is a sampling of evidence to your self-concept to change fundamentally who you believe you are. And so take relentless action every single day. There is no such thing as taking too much action. Every single one of you, I guarantee, could be doing more in less time. You're doing too much theorizing. You're playing it small, and you can play it so much bigger. You can shoot from the hip. There's a Latin proverb, fortune favors the bold. Favor imperfect action. Getting things wrong and learning as a result, following that process of iteration where you get feedback from action. You're trying to plan things when you haven't even taken any action. I fell into this trap. Do not do it. You won't make any progress. You will lose. Fortune favors the bold, especially with entrepreneurship. So take a relenting action and build an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are. An undeniable stack of proof that you are the version of you for whom the goal is inevitable. And if you take enough action, those beliefs will shift. And so that's the most important lever that we can pull. But they do not happen in isolation. We must act like the person for whom the goal is inevitable, but we must also think like the person for whom the goal is inevitable. And we also have an ability, humans have this very special ability to consciously choose our thoughts. The vast majority of the thoughts that you're thinking right now are two things. They are negative, or you have a proclivity towards negativity. That's an evolutionary response. And also they're on autopilot. And so you're negatively on autopilot, ruminating on the past or worrying about the future, continuing to project the past onto the future, creating more of the same. And so if we want to ensure that we're taking aligned action, you want to think like the person for whom the goal is inevitable. And the main thing that I got out of doing this is celebrating every single small win. Right now, you may be in rock bottom. And so whatever the win looks like for you, brushing your teeth, getting out of bed, doing the action to get closer to another day, and whatever aligned action looks to you, whatever action you need to take, whether it's 200 cold calls a day, whether it's running ads, whether it's testing products, making trades, whatever vehicle you're in, it doesn't matter. Celebrate every single win and reinforce it. This is who I am now. Have an internal affirmation. Mine is just, this is who I am now. You're just confirming internally with conscious thought. It feels a bit ridiculous. You can speak it out loud if you want, if you don't care about being viewed as a crazy person, which is such a liberating place to be as a quick tangent. But consciously using thought in your mind, reinforcing this is who I am now, celebrating your wins, patting yourself on the back. Because if you do not consciously instill positivity, reinforcement, negativity will overtake you. Thoughts from the old self will infiltrate your mind and unconsciously deviate your action away from the outcome that we need to arrive at, that we need to achieve. And so we can consciously use thought as a weapon. Now, there are different things you can also do with this in terms of visualization and gratitude and all of these, but they are supplements. If you can celebrate every single win within your mind, you begin to create this snowball effect, this momentum. You have this orange that you get from every single action that you take. Celebrating the win is simply squeezing as much juice as possible. Get as much juice from every bit of action you take and you will begin to create momentum. No, I don't care if you've been going for 2 months now consistently. Continue to celebrate your consistency. You will continue to create that snowball of momentum, that sort of winning effect which you build up. And never get complacent. Continue to celebrate your wins every single day through thought. Next, the final lever that we can pull is emotion. Now, as I said, if we are taking action that aligns us with our goal, but all of the emotion is the opposite version of that. So we're taking confident action, we're doing 200 cold calls a day, but when we do those cold calls, we feel terrified, anxious, and not confident, then that experience which the ARM is feeding to the self-concept is filtered through the EAM. We've done the action, but this, you must understand, if you're taking action, but it's wrapped in this negative emotion, this anxiety and fear, what is that communicating to your self-concept? That we're not changing, that this is who I am, like this is foreign to me, this isn't something I can sustain. You are communicating that you are not capable of achieving the goals. And so having aligned emotion is so important, or you're not going to shift long-lasting beliefs. The action you're taking is going to continue to feel resistant for the rest of your life if you do not align emotion with the action you're taking. And this is almost the most important thing. Because of the EAM, the amount of emotion you feel determines how impactful the evidence is that you take. So you can take small pieces of action, but really feel that win. You can think about it, but you can also really feel it and celebrate it. So that ties into thought as well. As I said, thought and emotion, they interplay with each other. They're connected in many ways. If you feel the win and you follow that positive gratitude, confidence, alignment, inevitability, if you feel that, then that will almost fast track that belief. You are shifting who you fundamentally see yourself as faster if you feel more emotion, because that's how belief changes. And remember, emotional response will amplify how compelling that piece of evidence is. And so you can shift your identity, you can brainwash yourself so much faster through emotional amplification. And so obviously, as I already said, you can celebrate your wins, feel your wins. But another way we can do this is through what I call state activation. Now, this is different for different people. For me, I struggle to visualize. I just can't really picture very well in my mind. And so what I do is a lot of hypnosis, where you can begin to simulate success, simulate you doing the actions getting towards the goal, simulate yourself as the inevitable operator. And when you do that, you feel the emotions related to that, the inevitability, the conviction, the confidence, the calm. You feel it, and then you project that forward into the day. You activate the state every single day. So I run a hypnosis track every single day. Now you can find these all over YouTube. You've got to understand what your limiting emotion is, or what emotion you need to achieve the goal. Typically it's going to be some sort of confidence or calm, or even getting rid of anxiety or anything like that. You can search them up on YouTube. There's loads of good stuff. There is also some crap. So you've got to filter through, see what you like, try different stuff out, and you should be coming out of that feeling invigorated, because hypnosis is a whole different topic, but it is legit stuff. It's used clinically to change behavior on a dime, quit smoking, losing weight. We can also use it to change behavior to get towards our goal. Why wouldn't we do that? But you can also do visualization. You can also listen to music, workouts, stuff like this. Whatever gets you into that high, let's call it high vibrational state, that good mood. Because if you're in a good mood, if you're in a confident mood, if you're happy with yourself, you are the probability that you continue to take action towards your goal has gone up 100 times. And the action that you do take becomes so much more compelling. And so always assess and audit your emotional state. The more you can sit in that positive chair, the room of the aligned self, the more compelling the evidence is when you take action. But also, the more likely it is you take the action in the first place. Remember, emotion plays a significant role determining the action you take, but also how compelling that action is to the self-concept in terms of the beliefs that you shift and creating that lasting change. And so emotion is such an important component. It's important to note that if you are taking action in alignment with the person for whom the goal is inevitable, you are being the inevitable operator, then you know for a fact that you at some point will get to the goal. That is known as certainty. Confidence can be defined as the degree of certainty you have in your ability to achieve a desired outcome. And so if you have full certainty in something, you can take confidence from that. You don't need to have confidence in your ability to achieve the goal. You don't need to look at the top of the mountain. Just look at the steps right in front of you. Embody that inevitability. If you just realize you only need to focus on the present moment, that is all you're responsible for, you can begin to garner a lot more of this emotion. Now, I've spoken about this at length in other videos, but the gist is, the past and the future aren't real. They're illusions of time. Realize all you're ever going to be responsible for in your life is the present moment. And it's infinitely small. That infinitely small time gives you an infinitely large degree of certainty and therefore confidence. If you can carry forward that confidence into the actions you take and the thoughts you think, and you wrap this all together in an all-in-one, AI1, all-in-one approach, instead of turning up just trying to do more with deliberate action, 20%, you're not likely to succeed. But if we're going in and we're taking off emotion, thought, action, changing our state of being, we will shift who we are, our self-concept, and therefore what we get. There is no other way. Omnimorphism is the philosophy of inevitable change, because if you are being the version of you for whom your goal is inevitable, it will be. There is no other way. External reality is simply a reflection of an internal cause. And this model has changed literally everything for me. Before, I didn't even know what life was. Before I learned this, before I discovered this, it's like I didn't know how to read. It's like I couldn't see. When you understand this truly, and look, this is a dense topic and I've gone through it quickly. So this requires you probably to rewatch this. The more you rewatch this, the more you will pick up and the more you'll start to see this. Because once you gain awareness about how reality works, you begin to look in your life and you see loads of different circumstances in which this is happening. And that's where you begin to get control. If you do not have awareness over something, by definition, you cannot control it. Omnimorphic reality, man. Please save this video, bookmark it, watch later, whatever. If you can go over this, the more you can go over this, the probability that you will succeed will go up exponentially, because my God, if someone explained this to me 5-6 years ago, I would have colonized Mars by now, because this is really how this all works. Man, I hope that all made sense. I hope you found this valuable. Godspeed.